Have you ever wondered how you can build your custom CLI, where you can interact with your project folder and maybe even create or delete files? Well, your dream is coming into reality. In this tutorial, we will create a fully functional custom CLI, and you will be able to show a list of commands, a list of all the files inside a folder, create new files, and even delete them. To build this project, we have only to use 3 Node.js modules. The first one is the readline module. The second one is the events module. And the last one is the FS promises module. Before we start, we have also to extend the emitter class. So here and we have to initialize a new emitter. The readline modules provides an interface for reading data one line at a time. The events modules allows us to instantiate the event emitter class, which is a Node.js core feature. In short, these modules allows us to emit and intercept events for our purposes. If you are not new to this channel, you may already know the FS Promises module. We are using it a lot in our Node.js blog application series. But if you are new to this module, you should know that it allows us to interact with the file system. To build our CLI, we can start to create an empty object, which we can call CLI. We can say instantiate the CLI module object, and here we can create our CLI object. After that, we can create another object inside our CLI object where we will store all our handlers function. Before we start, I want to explain what we are going to do here. Basically here, we want to be able to intercept the user inputs from our CLI and trigger output. Those inputs will be handled by our custom functions. We can start our project by creating the function that will emit for us the event we need in order to trigger our handlers function. And we can call this function process input. So here we can say CLI.process inputs is equal to a function, and here we want to pass a string which will be the user input, and through the ternary operator we are going to do some checks. Basically here we are saying that if these two conditions are respected, we want back this value, otherwise we want false. We have only to check if this string exists. We can initialize an array where we can store all the inputs that we want to accept on our CLI. So here we can say let inputs, and here we want to pass an array, and I want to pass the command help, the command exit, list users, create user, and the command delete. And now we want to initialize a variable where we store the false boolean. So here we can say let match is equal to false, and we want to check if the user input is present in our inputs array. So basically here we are checking if the user input is present in our inputs array. If this condition is true, then we want to emit an event which has the name of our input and contain the string, the argument of our string. And after that we want to return true. If the user insert an input which is not present in our inputs array, we want to console log sorry, try again, okay? At this point, we can start to create all the inputs handlers, okay? So here, now that we can process our input and we can emit a specific event, we have to build a function that will handle those events. To achieve our goal, we can use the on method of the emitter class, which basically is an event interceptor. Basically, we want to use it to grab the event that has been triggered by our process inputs function, on, and here we want to grab the event. So the events will be one of our inputs keywords. So here we want to build the help event. So here we can say help, and we want to pass a function that will trigger our CLI.handlers, dot help function, which doesn't exist yet, but we will build it soon. And we can repeat this process with all the inputs we have in our inputs array. In order to test every function we build from here, we have also to build the init function. In this function, we manage the CLI interface itself by using the createInterface method of the readLine module. CLI.init is equal to a function. Before we start to build our function, I can show you a little tricks that will make you able to change the color of our console log output. Console.log. And here we want to pass here we are saying at our console of which color we want this sentence, and this is a clear blue, okay? So now let's create our CLI interface. And here we want to pass an object and we want to pass the input parameters. We want to pass the output parameter. And we want to pass the prompt parameter, which is an empty string. In short, here we are saying that we want to allow our CLI to receive inputs and give back output, while the prompt parameter provides a string with which our CLI will start. So now we have to use the prompt method on our interface object to initialize a new input line. And we want to bind our CLI interface to a line event, which is native to the readLine module, and here we want to pass our processor input string in order to route the input to emit the event we need. We want to pass a function that will accept a string, and here we want to use our CLI processor input and we want to pass this string. After that we want to create a new line, so interface.prompt, okay? As the last thing here, we want to bind the interface to a close event in order to close our CLI process. Interface.own close, which is also native of the readLine module. And here we want to pass a function and we want to use the exit method of the process object, and we want to pass the 0, which is basically the same to close our command line, okay? So after this we can try to initialize our CLI. So we can try to do a little test, and if we go here, node CLI.js, as you can see here we have a problem with our color, but no problem. As we said before, here is it, the first symbol that we have in our line. So if I type something, sorry, try again, because this string has no match in our inputs array. So let's try to understand why these things is not blue. Okay, I missed here an X. So here we can try to restart. So here node CLI.js, and as you can see here we have a blue line. Okay, now if we type something, okay, sorry, try again, and so we can press Ctrl C to exit from our CLI, and we can start to build our custom function. The first command that we want to fulfill is the help command, so let's go to build this function. CLI.handlers.help will be a function, and here we want to create an object that will display all the possible commands. We want to display properly on our CLI all this list of commands, and we can achieve this goal by using a for loop and appending to a new line every key and value of our commands object. So here we can say So basically here we want to append to a new line the pairs of key and value of our commands list, and we want the value in white, and here we are doing nothing else than creating a little bit of space between the key and the value of our command list. So now we have only to save our CLI.js file, and we can try to test out this new function. So here we can say node CLI.js, and we can type help. And as you can see, our CLI gives back a list with all the possible commands. So here we can type Ctrl C and we can go out. To avoid every time to do Ctrl C, we can build the exit function. So here we can say exit CLI.handlers.exit will be a function. We want to pass only process.exit, and we want to pass the number 0, which is equal to say Ctrl C. In fact, if we go in our command line, we can say node CLI.js and we type exit. And as you can see, our CLI is no longer running. Okay, we can close our terminal and we can go ahead to build the other function. We can try to build the create user function. But before we do that, we have to create a new folder where we store all the users data in a JSON format. So here we can create a users folder. Okay, and now we can start to create the create user function. So here we can say create user, CLI.address.create user is equal to an async function, because we are using the fs promises module, so here we want to use the async await keyword, and as well we want to pass our string variable, which is our user input, and we want to also use the try catch block in order to grab the errors if there are any. So here we can say try catch here, and we want to pass the error here. So now we have to grab the email and the password from our user input. So we can use the split method. And the password. Okay. So now we want to create a random user ID using the matRandom method. And we want to create the user object. So now we have to use the fs promises module in order to create the new file inside our users folder. And we have to also use the WX flag in order to open and write inside a file. Now we have to use the stringify method in order to stringify our user object. And here we want to pass our user object. At this point we have only to write inside the file, so await, and here we want to pass our file handle, and we want to pass our string data. Okay. As last things, we want to close the file with the close method, so await file handle dot close, and when the process is completed we want to console log out user created, so console log. And here we want to say user created. Okay. Let's save our CLI and let's try to test out our new function. So node CLI.js help. Okay. I want to create a new user and I want to say hello at kungfucoding.io, and we want to pass a random password. Okay, we get an error. Okay, I understand why, because here we have to pass here async and we have to pass the user string as well, because if we don't pass the user string we have no input to process. Okay, let's save our CLI, but before we do that we have also to do these things in our delete function, so let's do it. String and string. Okay, we want to use async here as well. Okay, let's save our CLI.js. Let's go in our terminal and we can do here node CLI.js. We can try to type help. Okay, create user and hello at kungfucoding.io, and we want to pass a random password. And as you can see, user created. If we go in our users folder, we have a new JSON file with the data we have just passed in our CLI. Great, we can continue to build the other function. So let's close our CLI. So exit. Okay, CLS. Let's close our terminal, and we have to go back in our CLI.js file, and here we can start to build another function. And for example, we want to be able to list all the users. So here we can say list and cli.address.users equal to an async function. And here we want to use the readDir method. Let user IDs is equal to await fs promises dot readDir. Okay, and we have to specify the directory that we want to read. So now we can initialize a counter in order to display the number of each line. So here we can say let counter is equal to 0. Okay, and now for each user ID we want to read inside the user folder. So here we can say users IDs dot for each, and here we want to pass an async function. We want to take every user ID, and we can say let user data is equal to await fs promises dot read file, and we want to read inside the users folder. Okay, here we want to pass our user ID, and we want to also pass the UTF-8 encoding flag. Now we have to parse into JSON format into an object our data string. So we can say user data is equal to JSON.parse user data. Okay, and at this point we have only to format properly on our console those data and display them. So here we can say let line is equal to counter, because we want at the start of each line the line numbers, some spacing, email, colon, space, plus we want to pass our user data dot email dot trim. The trim method deletes all the spaces at the start and at the end of our string. Here we want to pass a space, dash dash dash, another space, and after that we want to pass password, colon, plus user data dot password dot trim, and our user ID. But since this ID contains the file extension, we want to replace it. So here we want to use the replace method. We want to replace the .json string with an empty one. And that's it. At this point, we have only to increment our counter, and we have to console log our line. Okay, let's try out our new function. So here node CLI.js help, we can say list users, and as you can see here we received a new line with the number, with the email, with the password, with the user ID, and so on. If we create a new user and let's say hello at kungfucoding.io and a new password, so here random password 2, and we type users, list users. As you can see here we have 2 lines. In our users folder we have 2 users. So now let's create the last function of our tutorials. So here we can say delete. We want to call this function address.delete, an asynchronous function, and we want to grab our user's input as well. we want to take our user ID by using the split method, okay? And we want to also use the trim method in order to delete the white space at the start and at the end of our string. So now, in order to delete a file inside a folder, we have to use the unlink method of the fsPromises module, and we want to pass inside this method the path of the file that we want to read. So here we can say await fsPromises dot unlink, and here we want to pass the dir name variable plus our users folders, so users, and here we want to pass our user ID that we grab from the user input, and as well we want to pass the JSON extension, okay? So now we have only two console logouts, user deleted, okay? And we can try out this function by going in our terminal, node CLI.js, help, okay, we want to list the user in order to see what ID we want to delete, okay, now we can say delete -- user 53182, and as you can see, user deleted. Here we have only one file, and we can say list user, and as you can see here we have only one users. And that's all for this episode, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please consider to subscribing to my channel and leave a like to support more content like this. See you the next one, guys.